If you ask many organizations about governance, risk, and compliance, they often describe policies, spreadsheets, audit checklists, and documentation exercises. But governance is not paperwork. Risk is not a quarterly report. Compliance is not a one-time certification. As an enterprise security architect, you must design governance, risk, and compliance (GRC) into the structure of your enterprise security model. GRC becomes powerful when it is architectural. Architectural governance means controls are embedded by design. Risk decisions are traceable. Compliance mapping is systematic. Evidence is generated automatically. Accountability is clear. When governance is architectural, assurance becomes sustainable. When governance is manual, it becomes reactive and fragile. Frameworks provide structure. They do not secure your organization automatically, but they guide your architecture toward completeness. You must align your enterprise security architecture with recognized frameworks such as ISO/IHA, ISO 27001, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, PSPF, Essential 8. Each framework provides a different perspective. ISO 27001 emphasizes management systems and structured control domains. NIST CSA focuses on identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. PSPF defines security governance expectations in the Australian public sector. Essential 8 provides prioritized mitigation strategies against common cyber threats. As an architect, your responsibility is not to comply with all of them blindly. Your responsibility is to map your architecture to them intentionally. For example, if your architecture includes identity governance, logging integration, incident response capability, and asset management, those capabilities map naturally to multiple framework requirements. Architecture becomes the implementation layer. Frameworks become the validation lens. This alignment builds credibility. Audit-ready design means your controls produce evidence automatically. You should not scramble before audits. Instead, your architecture should generate log retention evidence, access review records, change management documentation, incident response records, vulnerability management reports. For example, if privilege access is governed properly, audit evidence should include approval workflows, time-bound access records, access review logs, revocation timestamps. If encryption is enforced, audit evidence should include encryption configuration policies, key rotation logs, access to key vault systems. Audit readiness is not about documentation volume. It is about traceability. You must design controls so that evidence generation is a natural byproduct of operations. When architecture and operations are aligned, audits become confirmation exercises, not crisis events. Not all controls have equal impact. Not all risks have equal probability. As an enterprise security architect, you must prioritize investments based on risk. Risk-driven prioritization means evaluating threat likelihood, business impact, regulatory exposure, operational disruption potential, reputational damage. For example, if ransomware is the most credible threat to your organization, investments in privilege access management, segmentation, backup integrity, and endpoint detection may take priority. If regulatory compliance is the highest risk driver, investments in data governance and audit readiness may take priority. Risk-driven design avoids two extremes: over-securing low-risk domains, under-investing in critical risk areas. You must work closely with risk management teams to ensure architectural decisions align with enterprise risk appetite. Security becomes strategic when it aligns with business-defined risk tolerance. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. Security maturity modeling provides a structured way to evaluate current state and define target state. Maturity levels may range from initial and reactive, repeatable, defined, managed, optimized. For example, At a low maturity level, identity access reviews may be manual and inconsistent. At a higher maturity level, identity governance may be automated, risk-based, and continuously monitored. Maturity modeling allows you to define roadmap phases, justify investment, demonstrate progress, align with framework expectations, communicate status to executives. As an architect, you must translate maturity into measurable criteria. Instead of saying we are improving, you say we increase multi-factor authentication coverage from 60% to 95%. That is maturity. Metrics make architecture tangible. Risk registers should not exist separately from architecture. Each identified risk should map to a control gap, a capability deficiency, a roadmap milestone. For example, if a risk assessment identifies insufficient logging coverage, the architectural response may include expanding centralized log ingestion, enhancing SIEM analytics, extending log retention policies. Risk becomes actionable when mapped to architectural capability. If risk remains in spreadsheets without architectural linkage, mitigation stalls. Governance maturity requires that risk informs design continuously. Policies should not exist as static documents. They should influence technical design. For example, if policy requires least privilege access, architecture must enforce role-based access controls and periodic review mechanisms. If policy mandates encryption of sensitive data, architecture must ensure encryption is enabled by default across storage platforms. Policy must be enforceable through configuration and automation. When policies cannot be technically enforced, compliance becomes dependent on human behavior. Architectural enforcement strengthens governance. Many enterprises face multiple regulatory or compliance requirements simultaneously. Instead of building separate control sets for each framework, you must design unified controls that satisfy multiple obligations. For example, access control governance may satisfy ISO 27001 access control clauses, NIST CSF protect category, PSPF identity requirements, Essential 8 mitigation strategies. Architectural unification reduces duplication. Duplication increases cost and complexity. Framework alignment should strengthen architecture, not fragment it. Executives require clarity. They do not want to hear clause numbers from standards. They want to know, are we compliant? Are we reducing risk? Are we improving maturity? Are we audit ready? Your reporting must translate architectural maturity into risk reduction metrics, compliance alignment summaries, roadmap progress indicators, incident trend analysis. Assurance is not about perfection, it is about demonstrable control. When governance is architectural, assurance becomes defensible. Governance is not only technical, it requires cultural alignment. Roles and responsibilities must be clear. Control ownership must be defined. Exception management must be formalized. For example, if a business unit requests deviation from an encryption policy, the process must include risk assessment, executive approval, documented justification, periodic review. Architectural governance includes exception management. Without structured exception control, standards degrade over time. When GRC is weak, audit findings increase, regulatory penalties escalate, executive trust declines, risk exposure grows, security investment becomes reactive. Weak governance creates instability. Strong governance creates confidence. Confidence supports digital transformation. As an enterprise security architect, you are not designing controls only for today. You are designing assurance for tomorrow. Ask yourself, are your controls mapped to recognize frameworks? Is compliance evidence generated automatically? Are security investments prioritized by risk? Can you measure security maturity? Is governance embedded in architecture or dependent on manual oversight? Governance, risk, and compliance architecture is not bureaucratic overhead. It is structural assurance. When built correctly, it strengthens trust internally and externally. If this lecture helped you understand how to architect governance, risk, and compliance strategically, make sure you subscribe to this series. In the next lecture, you will explore how to design target state enterprise security architecture and create a transformation roadmap. Like this video if you found it valuable. Comment below and tell me, does your organization treat compliance as a checkbox or as an architectural discipline? Your journey toward mastering enterprise security architecture continues in the next session.